حي على الفلاح.
Something is distracting you all, trying to do things until you visit the graves. And then nothing will distract you. The reality has set in. By trying to get a bigger and better car, a bigger and better house, a bigger and better job, more family, more children, all these other things, and death is something that is inevitable. Something that no one can stay away from and no one can deny. No one knows when it's going to come, but everybody knows that it's coming.
As soon as you die, the soul begins to experience the Barzakh world. The Barzakh life is a life which is a barrier, which has a barrier between this world that we live in and a world that is unexplainable to us. You can't understand it. It is a life of a certain type with its own reality. And it is nothing like this world. And it is not the here after the Day of Judgment, nor is it this world. It is somewhere in between.
All of a sudden, the most tremendous interrogation, the most severe type of interrogation that you will ever experience happens. The test. At the moment of death, right before the believer dies, because there's different situations. The situation for the believer is one, and the situation for the ingratitude-filled disbeliever is different. As for the believer, when his moment has come and he can't put it off any longer, first, other angels come and they sit as far as his eyes can see. He's completely surrounded by angels. Then the angel of death comes and he sits over his head. There is no escape. And then he tells the believer, "Come out, O believing soul." That person's soul comes out of their body like water coming out of a water skin. Real easy. It flows out. As soon as the angel of death gets the soul into his hand, those angels rush up and they have like cloth from paradise that smells good. And they wrap it up really well and they start ascending up to the heavens with this deceased soul. As they go up to the heaven and the smell comes, all the angels start to make dua and ask Allah to let that righteous soul pass by them. And they start calling him by the beautiful names that he had in this world, that the best names that the people called him. And they ask, "Who is that beautiful soul you have there?" "He is so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, the son of so-and-so." This soul, as it goes up through the different levels until it gets to the highest heaven. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, "Return it back to its body, because I promised them that I created them from the dust, and I'm going to return them to the dirt, and I'm going to resurrect them from it." And when it gets to its body, the people are now in the grave, and the people are now covering up his body, and he can hear their footsteps as they walk away. All of a sudden, the most tremendous interrogation, the most severe type of interrogation that you will ever experience happens. The test. It's the most scariest situation you can ever imagine. Munkar and Nakir show up. And these two angels, they're rough with everybody. They have fangs that would rip the whole earth in half. Their eyes dart like lightning and their voices rumble like thunder. And they ask you 3 questions, some say 4. who is your Lord? In the believer, he's accustomed, he knows what is expected of him at this moment. And he's been preparing, and subconsciously, but he knows the answer. Allah is my Lord. What is your religion? My religion is Islam, Islamuddin. And then he's going to be asked, who is that man that was sent to you? Muhammad is the messenger of our prophet, Nabiyuna Muhammad. Then a voice will come from the heavens and says, he has spoken the truth. Open up for him a window from paradise and spread his grave out. Make it comfortable for him. His grave is spread out as far as he can see. He's relaxing. And he's shown the hellfire. And it said to him, this would have been your place in the hellfire. And a beautiful face shows up. And so the person in the grave is going to say, who are you? You know, but you got a good feeling. He says, I am your good deeds. I am your good deeds. You were quick in obeying Allah, and you were slow to disobey Him. That's for the believer. As for the disbeliever, the situation is a lot more serious. That someone who has disbelieved in Allah has rejected the validity of the Quran and rejected the validity of the prophecy of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It doesn't matter if they were a good Jew or a good Christian. When the disbeliever dies, the angel of death comes and sits by his head. The angels sit as far as he can see, surrounding him. They don't have the beautiful smelling shrouds. They have stinking sacks that they got out of the seventh depth, out of hell. And so, because of their attachment to this world, they do not want to leave. The soul runs around in the body, clinging on to the bones and holding on to the arteries and the veins, trying to hold on to the little bit of life that it thinks it has left. So much so that the angel of death has to put his hands on you. And it's a very painful thing. And as the soul is pulled out, as soon as it's ripped out of that body, those other angels, they rush it and they stick it into the sack and they wrap it up. And all the angels in the heavens cry out to Allah, oh Allah, don't let that stinking nasty soul pass by us. And they say, who is that? Who is that nasty foul soul? And he is so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. The angels start cursing him and calling him by the worst despicable names he's ever been called in this world. When he goes up to the paradise and he gets to the lowest heaven and he asks to come in, angels refuse. They do not give him entrance into even the lowest heaven. And then Allah calls out telling them, return it to the earth, because I promised them that I created them from the dust and I'm going to return them to the dirt and I'm going to resurrect them from it. But this time it's not taken back to its body. It's thrown. They want to get rid of it. The angels throw it back down to the earth and it slams into its body. When it slams into its body, it hears the footsteps of its people walking away from the grave. And next thing you know, Munkar and Nakir are there again. And they sit him up in a rough manner. And they yell at him and tell him, who is your Lord? And he's, I don't know. And he's lying. Then he says, what is your religion? He said, He just got ripped out of his body. He just got taken up to the heavens. He doesn't even know what was going on. And his stinking sack slammed into the earth, back into his body. And now these strange creatures that he never imagined before. Voices like thunder, eyes like lightning, fangs that can tear the earth in half. You be saying it too. if you weren't prepared. He's going to be asked, what do you say about that man? Who is that man that came to you? And he's going to say, I don't know. And then you're going to hear from the sky, he's a liar, she's a liar. And then the angel's going to say, what do you say about Muhammad? And he's going to say, I heard some people saying some stuff, so I said it too. And then they're going to beat him. They're going to beat this person up. So much so, his ribs are going to go into where his other ribs are. And he's going to see the hellfire. This is where you're going. This is your spot. Then he's going to be shown the paradise. That you ain't getting that. You're going to hell. Then the angels go away. And an ugly, despicable looking person comes and gets close to him. Man, what are you? I'm not getting a good impression here. He says, I am your bad deeds. I am your evil deeds to keep you company. And then other torments of the grave begin.
The Prophet ﷺ's journey. The narrator says, every time the Prophet ﷺ would meet us in the masjid or see us in a gathering, he would ask, who has seen a dream today? One day, the Prophet ﷺ, he himself saw a dream. And when the Prophet sees a dream, it's absolutely true. And he said, last night, someone came to me in my dreams, meaning angels. And they took me into the skies, into the life of the Barzakh, into another world of the dead. He said, we reached a place. I saw before me a man who was lying down on the floor. And there was another man, a big man holding a huge stone. He would come up to this man lying on the floor and he'd throw the stone onto his head. And it'd crush his head. And the stone would roll away. The man would go to pick up the stone, and by the time he comes back to the person on the ground, his head has been restored. And he'd crush it again. And he'd keep doing that over and over. So I asked them, who is this man on the floor, and why is that other man doing this to him? They said to me, move on, move on. He said, then we moved on. Then we passed by a man who had a brass hook in the front of his hands. And he would place the hook on the front of his face from his mouth, and he would rip his mouth and eyes and half of the face to his ear. Then he would come to the other side of his face and rip his other side of his face to the other ear. When he'd go to the other side, the first side is restored. Then he'd do the same to the restored side, and then the other side is restored, and then he'd do it again. And he'd keep on doing that over and over again. The Prophet ﷺ asked, who is this person and why is that other man doing this to him? They said, move on, move on. He said, I reached a man who was swimming in a lake which looked like blood. And there was another man on the edge, he had stones in his hands. The man would swim to the other man would put stones into his mouth and he would have to swallow them and carry them across. And he would bring them out on the other side and he would come back, swim back, take another stone, put it on the other side and continuously do that. He said, why is this man doing this and who is the other man? He said, move on, move on. He said, we reached a place. He said, I saw men and women who were naked inside of an oven and it has fire underneath it. And the fire would burn from underneath and burn them and they would all scream. And the fire would come back. Then it would burn them and they'd all scream and come back. He said, who are these people and why is this happening to them? They said, move on, move on. He said, I reached and saw a man so tall that I could look up and I could barely see his face. But he was beautiful. He had a white beard. And around him were children. Lots and lots of children. In a beautiful garden. He said, who is this and who are these children? They said, move on, move on. And I saw a group of people. One side of their body, of their face, was the most handsomest and beautiful that I've ever seen. And the other side of their face and body was the most gruesome and ugliest I've ever seen. Then they'd walk to a river and they'd bathe in it, and then the side that was ugly was restored to be as beautiful as the other side. And so they were completely beautiful as I've ever seen. I asked, who are these people and why is this happening to them? The angel said, move on, move on. He said, I came to a man, this big man, and his face was the most hideous and ugliest I have ever laid eyes on. And he didn't smile. I asked, who is this person? And they said, move on, move on. Finally, as the dream was almost over, I turned to my companions and I said, this night I have seen many strange things. Can you explain them to me? And they told him, the first person that was having a man crushing his head, he said, that was a man who used to deliberately sleep past his prayers. His head is too heavy to get up for his prayers. And so he is being punished like this until the Day of Judgment. The second person, who were having hooks ripping their sides of their faces to their ears, said, these are the people who used to spread lies about other people without making sure if it's true, and they carry it about the other people, ruining their lives and their reputations. This is punishment till the Day of Judgment. The third person, who was swimming and having these stones, he said, he is the person who consumes interest, riba, usury. So they are being punished this way until the Day of Judgment. What's going to happen is going to be worse. He said, the people that were in that big huge oven underneath and screaming from the heat were the adulterers and adulteresses of this ummah. As for the people who had one side beautiful and the other side ugly, and they would wash from the river and they would be restored, he said, these are the people whose good deeds weren't enough to make them enter Jannah. So they are burnt for their bad deeds, and then they are saved from the fire, and they will cleanse themselves from this river in Jannah, and they'll be restored. As for the tall man that you saw with children around him, that is Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And those children are the children of believers and non-believers who died before the age of maturity. As for the man who you saw was hideous and didn't smile, then this is Malik, the angel guardian of hellfire. He has never smiled since the day the hellfire was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But these are examples of the things that are happening or will happen in the life of the Barzakh.